Well, good morning. My name's Shona MacPherson. I'm a speech and language therapist here. I'm based at the Pines, and I'm involved in delivering training in understanding autism and social stories and some of the parents' first steps, next step sessions that we do here. And I'm also involved with the NDAS clinic as well and cover the Glenacher area. The schools that are out there. But this morning we're going to have a look at structured play and how that can support communication. Well, as you know, a child will spend a large part of their day playing. And while they're playing, they're developing a variety of skills. And a child does not need fancy toys to play. A child will play with bricks, with mud, with feathers, with boxes, and they'll always find a space to play as well, won't they? It might be under a table, in a corner, under a shelf. In fact, I remember when I was little myself, we often went to my grandparents on a Sunday afternoon, and they had a big bay window with heavy velvet curtains down the side. And because it was such a big window, the shelf, the windowsill was really very low. So I could sit and have the shelf as like a little desk behind the curtain, and this was my little den. And I used to play post offices. I had paper and a pen and scissors, and I would make money and stamps and had endless hours of fun playing in my little space. And children play because, well, they just can't help themselves, and they learn in different ways. This morning we're going to have a look at the different stages of play. We're going to look at where some autistic children can become stuck at the different stages, how we can help with that, and we're going to look at structured play and how this can support children's communication. There are different stages of play which come naturally to most babies and infants. And as parents and professionals who work with children, we are naturally motivated to play and interact with our children. And so it can be difficult if a child does not respond as we expect them to, and we may not know what to do. Many children with autism or other neurodevelopmental conditions will play differently and often engage in inflexible, repetitive play patterns in a solitary manner. However, with help and support, we can try and progress their play. So let's have a look at the different stages. The first one is sensory motor play. The baby or the child is interested in the way things taste, feel, smell, look and sound. They'll put things in their mouths, they'll play with them, they'll enjoy the sounds and the way they are in the light. And as they're doing that, they're exploring their environment and learning about light, about colours, about textures. And all sorts of toys can be used. I mean, that's some examples, but you can have bubbles, balloons, squeaky toys. You can play in the bath with them, with bath toys. You can also play outside, swinging and rocking and pushing them. And people games are a really good game to play at this stage. You know, rocking, row, row, row your boat, round and round the garden, heads, shoulders, knees and toes, these kind of things, and it helps the child explore their bodies as well. And that's a nice way, an important way for them to learn to look and to listen and to begin to pay attention. The next stage is functional play. At this stage, the child is beginning to understand that toys, what they're for and their uses. So they'll begin to understand the cause and effect. They'll realise that if they push a button, there'll be a response. That if they turn a key, that a door will open. So they're beginning to use the toys. And lots of toys can be used at this functional stage. The child will start to play back and forth games at this stage as well, and will start putting things in and out of containers. I've got a friend who's got a wee one who's nearly 1, and he will play endlessly, taking all the items out of Mum's changing bag, the nappies, the wipes, her purse. In fact, I gave him my purse, and of course all the cards came out, all the coins came out. That kind of play, that's your functional play, where there's a cause and effect. Then we've got constructive play. That's when they're starting to build things, putting bricks into towers, beginning to fit jigsaw pieces into inset boards. They'll play with Play-Doh, start making things. Hi, in you come. Begin to play with Duplo, with gluing and sticking. And physical play comes into this as well. So when they're outside, learning to run and crawl and climb and jump, developing their gross motor skills. And then we move into pretend or imaginative play. This stage is where the child is beginning to pretend. So they'll begin to pretend to make a cup of tea with a play set and give it to you. Mummy, here's a cup of tea for you. Or give you something to eat. And again, there's different stages. They'll start to do that with these kind of toys. And then they'll start to pretend that an object is something else. So then they'll say, pretend this is a biscuit. Or pretend this is an aeroplane. And then the next stage is moving on to pretending that a toy is real. Pretending that a toy horse can jump. Or pretending that something is there that isn't there. In fact, I was chatting about this with my daughter, and she was saying, Mum, do you remember I had imaginary pets? And actually, my daughter's 25 now. I was going, did you? She said, yeah, you never let us have any pets. So I had an imaginary dog and an imaginary horse. My horse was called Star and my dog was called Honey, and we went on adventures in the garden. I was like, oh good. Beginning to develop their imagination. So that's the different stages. And then the child will start to involve other children in their role play, in the imaginary play. So that leads us on into symbolic play. Why is it not? What's gone wrong? Oh, there we go. Sorry. In terms of our stages of social play. So again, different stages of social play. The first stage is solitary play, playing by themselves. Children with autism tend to have a tendency to solitary play. And that can be okay in certain stages. You know, a child in primary school, if they're feeling overwhelmed in the classroom because they're having to concentrate, they're having to process language, they're having to interact with their peers, to then go out into the playground and have time on their own, well, that's really good for them. It just helps them to calm down again, helps them to rebalance all their emotions and their senses. But if you've got a child that is only playing on their own in solitary, then you want to try to build on that. So the next stage is spectator play. This is where they will watch other children play, but they won't join in themselves. And some children will do this for a while until they become familiar with the play and have the confidence to join in themselves. While others may need help. You often see this in nursery. You know, the child is on the edge just observing other children that are playing. And they may do that for quite a long time. And then maybe with help they'll come in and join for a wee bit. The next stage is parallel play. The child is beginning to play alongside with the same toys, but not sharing their play ideas. So you'll see this with children maybe in the water tray or in the sandpit. There are other children, but that child may be quite unaware of what the other children are doing. They're just focused on their own play and they're not being involved with the other children. And then you've got associative play. So this is where they're playing together with the same toys, but they're not sharing their ideas. So they may be on the play car mat with all their cars. They've got their own agenda and they won't let the other children do what they're doing. So Often you have fallouts because the children are both wanting to play with the same car, or if it's construction, they're both wanting the same pieces of Duplo. So they are playing associatively but not sharing their ideas. That's when cooperative play comes in. When they're playing cooperatively, they're beginning to share their ideas, they're beginning to take turns, they're cooperating with each other and building on each other's ideas. Many children with autism or other neurodevelopmental difficulties do not develop through these stages of play in the same way as typically developing children. And there are many different reasons as to why this is. So why do some children become stuck at one stage of play development? Well, it might be that they are sensory seekers, so they love the sensory play and struggle to move on. So it might be that they're really into ribbons, you know, that kind of thing, where they just love seeing the light, love seeing the movement of the ribbons, and that's their thing, and they just want to stick with that. I observed a little boy who loved watching the sunlight come in as a shaft through the window, and he would lie on the floor in the shaft of light and just watch his hand and the movements of that with the shaft of sunlight. There was another wee one who just absolutely loved water. So whenever he came into nursery, he would just make a beeline for the taps and have the water trickling in and out of his hands. But of course he had to watch, because he also liked to empty and fill containers with the water, so the soap would very quickly go down the drain and he would be filling the soap container up with water in and out. So that's your sensory seekers. But then you can have sensory avoiders, where there may be just too much fear in exploring other objects. So they will stick with only one toy, and they'll be the children that have a favourite toy and that's all they want to play with. They'll come in and maybe in the nursery they'll only play with the dinosaurs, and it will be that repetitive play over and over because they're familiar with it and they don't want to explore the rest of the toys because it's fearful. They don't know what the senses are going to be like. They may become stuck if the desire for routine and fear of change can make exploring toys daunting. So again, they will be stuck only with the same toy. And then it could be, I was going to say, that's when I remember seeing a little boy. He would only watch the same film over and over again, and in fact there was one piece, I think it was Toy Story at the time, there was one piece of the film that he would stop, rewind, watch again, stop, rewind, watch again, because it was familiar and he really liked it. He liked what was being said, he liked that piece of music, and he just wanted to watch it over and over again, didn't want to move on to any other film. Another reason for becoming stuck can be focusing in on the details of an object or a toy, and that will prevent the child from seeing the bigger picture. So they may only ever spin the wheels of a car and not realise that the car can be moved along a road or can be used as a dumper and tip things in and out of it. They may like taking things apart, so they'll actually break open a pen and take all the spring out and everything, or you'll lose the batteries out of your remote control because they've been taking it apart all the time. Is that sounding familiar? Yeah, so that's focusing in on the detail of things and not seeing the bigger picture. Another reason can be that communication difficulties can mean that it's difficult for them to ask for help if they get stuck, so they don't have the language to ask for you to help them open something or turn something over for them or switch something on. And then the last one here I've got is rigid thinking can prevent them finding new ways to use objects or toys. So they'll only ever line up their trains or only ever line up their cars or line up pencils in colour sequence, but not draw with them or not use the cars on the play mat. I was going to say about the communication as well. about getting stuck and not being able to ask for help. I worked with a girl in primary school who had quite limited speech, and she hated making mistakes. If ever she was told no or that's wrong, she just had an absolute meltdown. And we thought it was because she didn't like getting things wrong. But we eventually realised that it was actually being told no that she didn't like. She just hated being told no. So when we turned it around and said to her, try again, she was a lot calmer. And she was able to redo whatever the piece of work was or whatever the drawing was. So, how can we help? Well, by joining in. Show that you're interested in what they're interested in. Get down on the floor and join in with them. Try and copy what they're doing. But remember to pause and wait. I saw a wee one, when we were working on pause and wait, saw a wee one with a box of raisins. And he was trying to open his box of raisins and he was struggling. But Mum just paused, just waited. And she said normally she would just dive straight in and open it for him because that's what she knew he wanted. But she did, she paused and she waited. And eventually the wee one handed over the box of raisins. And she said, open. And he copied and went, open. She was absolutely delighted and he got his raisins to eat. Similarly, I've got my very able assistant here. Just an example. It's really good to try and put favourite toys or favourite pieces of food into containers to try to help your child make a request. If it's not easy for them to open it, then what are they going to do? They're going to hand it over to you. So they've automatically made a request, haven't they? So she's requested balloon. So I get out the balloon. You want the balloon? I am hopeless at blowing up balloons. This pump is wonderful. So, balloon.
Balloon.
Yes.
I don't want to go down.
I know, I don't want to go down. Now, I'm pausing and waiting again. Balloon.
Balloon.
Now, she said balloon, so let's add to that. She said balloon, so I'll say, I want balloon. Now, she might not repeat that first time around, but next time,
Want balloon?
I want balloon. Clever girl, she's already copied. I mean, this might take a long, long time, but it just gives you a wee example, thanks Jill, of how pausing and waiting and adding language can help your child's communication. My colleagues do the Words Up training. Don't know if anyone's been on the Words Up training. If you get the opportunity to go, it's really worthwhile. They have these different stages of trying to help your child. There's first words, words together, talking together, and they use these different strategies, playing and talking together, pausing and waiting, copying and adding words, and then being careful with questions. We're going to come on to that in a wee minute. So, thinking about how we can help, we're going to join in. Try and forget what you know about toys and just observe and watch what your child is doing. You know, if they're playing with the ribbons, get down and play with them. Watch their eye contact. See what it is that's attracting them to what it, you know, to the ribbon. And then try and widen their horizons. So if they're playing with the ribbons, try putting it on the road and saying, oh, it's a road, get a car, let's drive on the road. So, you know, play along with them, but then widen what it is that they're doing with it. Also, widen your horizons. So use whatever you're doing in the house. For example, if you're loading the washing machine, make a game of it. Get the child to help you and label the pieces of clothing as you're putting them in. Or if you're washing the dishes in the sink and you're playing with bubbles, make a game of it and help allow the child to join in. Yeah, we've said, watch what they do, try and add language. Keep your own language simple and just add it bit by bit. And that can help with their communication. And then, as I said, we're going to look at being careful with questions. You know, asking and answering questions is an important part of communication, but too many questions can absolutely stop a conversation. If you bombard the child with, for example, what's this? What's it called? What colour is it? How many legs has it got? You're giving them all this information, well, all these questions that they have to answer. They've got to process what you're saying and then come out with the answers. And it can be just too overwhelming for them. And in actual fact, you're not teaching them anything. You're just demanding responses from them. If you turn it around and instead of making questions, make statements or comments or descriptions, or exclamations. I mean, sometimes you do have to ask a question, but instead of making it an open-ended question, you can make it a yes/no. So that's a simpler reply for them. Or you can give an option. You know, instead of saying, what would you like for tea? I don't know what I want for tea. You know, that's such an open-ended question. You could say, are you hungry? Yes or no. That's a good reply. And then, would you like pizza or chips? Or would you like a sandwich or a yogurt? Then you're giving them the two options. Makes it much, much easier for them. Making sure that you have got a yogurt or whatever you're offering. Don't give them something you haven't got. Or go and get it. So you're giving them the visual. So you've got your yogurt and you've got your banana. Would you like yogurt or a banana? Makes it much easier. But if we have a look at this, trying to turn our questions around. Instead of saying, what's this? Tell them, oh, it's Teddy. I like Teddy. Oh, he's lovely and soft. I like his nice blanket. I think Teddy's sleepy. I'm going to put Teddy to bed. All that lovely language that's giving the child all that information, and it's playing along with what the child is playing with, and you're not bombarding them with questions and making demands on them. Great. Okay, let's think now about planning to develop your child's play. Have a think about what level of play you think your child is on. Are they at the sensory motor stage? Or are they at the constructive stage? Are they beginning to go into their imagination? What do they love? Use whatever it is that they love. If it's bubbles, if it's balloons, if they love wrapping themselves up or going into small spaces, could you build a tent for them? Could you create something behind the couch and crawl in with them? I remember my youngest, when he was a wee boy, he had one of these cabin beds. So the cabin's on the top and you've got shelves, drawers and a wee wardrobe underneath and a pull-out desk. And if you pulled the desk, it was on casters, if you pulled the desk right out, you could crawl in right behind the bed. So he discovered this and made it into a den. And one Christmas he turned it into a wee Santa's grotto. So he got tinsel and he got cushions and he got baubles and some fairy lights, and he set it all up. And he said, Mum, you've got to come in and see this. So of course I crawled in, not a big space, got wedged in. He came in behind me and I got claustrophobic. I had to tell him, Peter, back out. I'm going to pass out here. So be aware, if you're not into small spaces, don't get yourself trapped. But try to get down to the level of the child and get involved in what it is that they are doing. Think about the play environment and try and set the scene. So try not to have a mess of toys everywhere. You know, try and clear a space so that you can focus in on one specific play item. And concentrate as well on just how much the child can concentrate for. I observed a boy in a games hall, lad with autism, and the whole space was empty and he was running around for a while, and then there were chairs stacked against the wall, and all by himself, he had quite limited language, all by himself, he picked up a chair and put it in the middle of the hall. Then he got another one and he put it directly behind it, got another one. And his PSA and I are just observing. So he had a row of 5 chairs, one behind the other. And then he took us by the hand and sat us down. And he sat at the front. And we thought, oh, are we on a bus? Are we on a train? And then he said, 3, 2, 1, blast off. We were in a rocket, and it was absolutely fantastic. And we were able to add the language, you know, so, oh, it's rocky, oh, we're coming into land, we're on the moon. And he was in his element, and he'd created that himself out of nothing and chairs. It's lovely. So yeah, think about the space. Now, thinking about structured play. Try to develop a shared interest and joint attention. I've said that. Follow your child's play. Try and have paired items and try and make it structured. I don't know if anybody uses visual timetables at home or in the nursery or in the school. It's quite nice to have it structured so that you've got what the child is going to be playing with. Then you have a break to watch TV, then maybe you're going to play with a Lego again, then you're going to have snack time, then we're going to get out the jigsaws and then the bricks, and then we'll tidy up because it's going to be tea time. You know, have it like that, or even more simply, just have a first then board and show the child that it's going to be structured play time, and then we'll have snack. And by structured play, I mean try and make it a focus on one specific thing. There's an approach called TEACH, which is an American approach which focuses on ideas to help children with learning difficulties and with autism. They use workstations. I don't know if anybody's heard about workstations. And they suggest having zip bags like this to help the child in a structured play session. So you would put your child's favourite toy into a bag or a box, it could be a shoe box, and put a number on it. And you would have a strip like this that matches the numbers. So, structured play session, you've cleared the area, you bring it out. We're going to play with bag number 1. You encourage the child to take the number 1 off here, match it on here. We're playing with bag number 1, open it up and start playing with it. So we've got our bricks, and try, as I'm saying, try and have the same toys that the child has. So if they're building their tower, you build it as well. Show them that you're interested in what they're doing. Copy them and observe them. And by doing that, you're getting involved in their play at their level. And then, if they're only repetitively doing that one thing, you could maybe try and introduce something else and see if they can copy what you're doing, so that you're expanding on their play and developing their play. You need to be aware how much your child can concentrate, and obviously think about the play level that they're on. You might only ever just have one structured activity and then it's snack time. But if they can concentrate, then you would tidy away zip bag number 1. Bricks are finished, all done. And you would put it in a finish tray. So that gives even more structure. It really focuses in and shows finished. Bricks are finished. And you would get out bag number 2. Again, something that the child really likes, but you're doing it in a structured way. Add number 2, we're playing with bag number 2. And then you get out your train track. And again, allow the child to play in their way, but then get involved and try and expand on the play. And using language all the time, whatever the child's saying, praise that, model it and build on it. So if you can get up to 4, if they can concentrate on 4, that's absolutely brilliant. But that might not be the case. It might only be 1 or 2. depending on your child's concentration and attention skills. And then when you're finished with all your bags, you go back to your first then board. It's snack time now, or whatever it is, out in the car. So that's a nice structured way of playing with your children, where it's really focused and you're doing it in a structured way. Then when the structured play is finished, you let the child go back and play with it with their other toys. Using a structured play area, why? Why would you do that? It helps to develop their play skills. It helps the child understand as well that what it is that you're wanting them to do, how much he has to do, when he'll be finished, and what's happening next. And a lot of children with autism have a real fear and anxiety about how long things are going to take, about the concept of time. There's a book that I've read called The Reason I Jump, by a boy called Naoki Higashida, and he talks about time being a big worry. He says the difference between 1 second and 24 hours to him means absolutely nothing. So he never knows what's going to happen next. He never knows how long something's going to take, and it just builds up the anxiety levels with him, and then he gets really upset. But having something as structured as that just reduces all these worries and helps with the anxieties. The other thing you can use, if you're doing a turn-taking game, you know, if you were maybe doing a jigsaw, my turn, your turn, putting the pieces in, or any other kind of board game, having a weight symbol can be a really useful thing. So when it's your turn, or if you're rolling the dice, if it's a board game, you give the child the weight symbol, and while they are holding it, it's not their turn, they're waiting. And then when it's their turn to roll the dice and take the turn, you take the symbol away, your turn. And that very simply helps them learn to wait and to take turns. So every time it's not their turn, they're waiting, and then you take it away and it's their turn. So that's another little strategy that can be useful. Now if we go on thinking about developing social play with slightly older children, we think about trying to help the child learn to cooperate, to share, like I say, to take turns. That can be a hugely difficult thing for children with autism. The whole idea of sharing and waiting and taking turns can be extremely stressful, and learning to participate in a group. But I don't know if anyone's heard about Lego therapy. Some schools use it. It is a formalised training where the child is learning to play in a very structured way, and we are hoping to get the Lego therapy training here at the Pines. We're in contact with the lady that used to deliver the training. She's not done it for a long time. We're hoping to get that done, but it is a very structured, formalised way, and it generally is only done by professionals. But the actual concept and idea is a really good one, and we've thought of ways in which that can happen and that you can use at home as well. So my very able assistants again are going to help me show you how we can use, first of all, Lego, and then we're going to look at Hama beads, and then we're going to look at baking. If I just push this over here, that's great. So you can see it's a trio. We're looking at Lego, and what we have is an engineer, we have a supplier, and we have a builder. Now the role of, I'll leave it all out at the end, you can come and have a look at this. The role of the engineer is that they will read the instructions on how to build the Lego model. And what they do is they tell the engineer, the engineer will tell the supplier what pieces of Lego they need to find. So Gillian would tell Karen that the first piece of Lego is
Grey flatbed.
There we go, a long grey flat bit. Now what the supplier does then is give it to the builder. Then the engineer would tell the supplier the next piece that would needed to be found. She would pass that on to the builder, and that would continue until the kit model was constructed. And they're actually making a little truck. Now it is very formalised, it is very strict, because what you're trying to do is help teach the children how to cooperate with each other, how to take turns. Now often you find that the builder is the favourite role. Everybody wants to be the builder, everybody wants to put the model together. But being an engineer and being a supplier is an important role, and every time you do it you can change around the roles, so everybody gets a turn eventually of being a builder. What you do need is to have kit models so that they are making up an actual end product. But then once they've done that, then they can have free play and do their own model making at the end of it, so they've got fun. But it is a very structured but simple way of helping children, so you can bring a friend in, or you can with your own child, and you could be involved in doing it as well, so that they are learning to cooperate and turn take. But if your child isn't really into Lego, or if it's girls, not all girls like Lego, maybe they're more into Hama beads. Sorry, Karen. So this time we have got a designer, a supplier again, and a creator. And again, same idea with Hama beads. So the designer would have the finished product, and she would tell the supplier what beads she would need. Oh, sorry, no, that's wrong. She would tell the supplier what beads she would need to source first of all. So maybe
you would need some green beads.
And maybe how many would be needed for the first row. So
maybe 5 or 6.
So 5 or 6 green beads. And then the supplier has to tell the creator where to put the beads. Oh no, I suppose that's the role of the designer, isn't it, as well? So the designer then tells the creator where to put them.
Try to put them in a V shape.
Right in the centre.
In the middle.
So lots of language being used, lots of turn taking, lots of pausing and waiting. It's just a really nice way of children playing cooperatively and coming up with a nice end product. And again, obviously they all like to be the creator, so you can swap around and take turns to do it. You're getting into it, Karen.
I always liked Hama beads.
Obviously, as an adult, you have to do the ironing to get the nice finished product. But that's another example. And then, same idea, but this time, baking. So I've got a recipe here for flapjacks. I've got our ingredients that we need, our oats and syrup and sugar and butter. I've got the equipment that we need, pan and a spoon and a tray, and I've got the instructions, the recipe. So this time it's the chef that reads out the recipe, and the chef tells the cook what ingredients are needed, and then the cook passes them on to the baker, and the baker puts them in the pan and stirs them up and puts them in the tray. Simple idea, but it's just really nice way of building and expanding and helping with communication skills with your children, but also a nice end product because they get to eat the flapjacks once they're cooked. Okay, thank you for that. That's great. So I'll leave that here and you can have a look at the different roles and how you think you could adapt that or make that work with your children. The other game that I've put down here is the socially speaking game. I don't know if anybody has seen that. We actually have 2 copies of it in our library here. And the socially speaking game, again, is, well, it's a board game that helps with communication skills. So for slightly older children, you can work around the board, and when you land on different squares, you have to do different things. So the yellow squares start with a question, so you have to think up a question starting with when, or a question starting with how. The blue squares are the start of a sentence and you've got to finish it. So if you land on this one, I like watching, and you've got to think of a reply. My favourite subject is, and then there's 4 different sets of cards, and when you land on a star, you have to pick up the card that matches, and there's a scenario that you have to try to solve. And then the corner squares are complement squares. So if you land on a corner, you have to pay a compliment to the other person or one of the other people playing the game. That's often caused endless fun because it can be really difficult to pay a compliment for some children. So saying things like, I like your shoes, or I like your hair. But it's all these kind of things that help the children learn with communication skills and learn with social interaction. Now the last thing that I was wanting just to mention is a book called Replays, and it's been written to address the challenging behaviour of autistic children through interactive symbolic play. So by using the replays technique that are in this book, the children are able to re-experience a scenario that had an unpleasant or a difficult ending, that had a negative response, and try and turn that around into a more positive experience. So for example, you know, a child that screams and gets upset when a balloon bursts. Well, you would replay that scenario with them, talk them through it, but at the end of the scenario the balloon would just deflate and there wouldn't be a big loud bang, to help them try to overcome their anxieties and their fears. They've done it using having to go and get a haircut, if that's a traumatic thing, or if some toy gets broken, or if there's a sudden change in a schedule. And they use it through kind of role play, reenacting the scenario, writing a wee story about it. There's an example here about an ice cream story, and they helped write the story out for the boy, because what had happened was he had had a meltdown, he had got really upset while they were all out having ice cream. So they wrote the story. One day, William, Alice, Mummy and Daddy went out for ice cream. Page 2, the ice cream arrived and everyone was happy. Page 3, then William got angry, he didn't know why. Page 4, William climbed on the table and dumped Alice's ice cream all over her. Alice began to cry. Page 5, Mummy got angry and yelled, then Daddy got angry and yelled. Page 6, the whole family left and didn't eat their ice cream. So that's what had happened, and then they helped him make his little book. He enjoyed doing that. He pretended to cry every time they got to page 4. And then they suggested writing an alternative ending. So page 1 to 3 remained the same, and then the story changed. Page 4, although he was angry, William sat quietly and waited for his ice cream. He told himself, I feel angry, but I won't do anything upsetting. I'll eat my ice cream. Page 5, everyone ate their ice cream and said, hooray, ice cream. Page 6, the whole family ate their ice cream together. William let Alice taste some of his, and Alice let William taste some of hers. So by sort of reenacting the scenario and talking through it, you try to help the child think of an alternative to make a more positive experience next time around. So that's just another resource that is quite useful and helpful.